Hello everyone, welcome back to Buried Files. Tonight we bring you 7 of the most disturbing true Appalachia deep wood horror stories ever submitted to this channel. Accounts from people who stepped off the trail and into places the mountains were never meant to share with outsiders. These are not campfire inventions, but first-hand confessions from hunters, locals, and wanderers who came forward with experiences too specific, too consistent, and too unsettling to dismiss as imagination. Names, locations, and timelines have been cross-checked wherever possible. And in several cases, their stories align with missing person reports, forgotten police files, and patterns whispered about for generations in those hills. In these woods, you will hear of a hidden camp that should not exist. Voices that borrow the memories of the dead. An old folk bargain that may have cost a stranger their life. And a cabin that shows up only when you are already lost. If you value slow-burning, authentic horror drawn from real encounters instead of cheap jump scares, subscribe to Buried Files and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next descent into the unknown. After you hear these testimonies, share your own Appalachian experiences or unexplained encounters in the comments below, because your story may be the next case we uncover. Now settle in, dim the lights, and listen closely as we enter the deep woods where the mountains decide who returns. My name is Thomas, and if you ever see the ridgeline go dark all at once, you turn around. You do not stop to look, you do not pull out your phone, and you do not tell yourself it is just a cloud. The mountains here do not use clouds when they want you gone. They use shadow, and sometimes they use men. I grew up in a hollow where most folks knew each other's trucks by the sound of the engine before they even came around the bend. We had one church, one gas station, and more deer than people. I learned how to shoot before I learned long division. By the time I was 16, I knew every game trail in a 10-mile radius better than I knew the hallways of my high school. Back then, the woods were just woods to me. Trees, rocks, creeks, maybe a black bear once in a while if you were unlucky or stupid. My granddad always talked about other things in the timber, the kind people left offerings for in the old days. But I filed those stories under the same category as Santa and the Easter Bunny. I believed in what I could track. I believed in boot prints and beer cans and drag marks in the leaves. You could say I believed in people being the worst monsters around, but even that was more of a joke than a philosophy. Funny thing about jokes. Sometimes the mountain waits for you to laugh, and then it wipes the smile right off your face. It was early October the year it happened. The air had that sharp edge that makes your breath show up in front of you like cigarette smoke. Leaves were just starting to turn. My friends Cole and Ray had this brilliant idea that we were going to camp on the far side of Buckthorn Ridge, way past where the marked trails ended. We were all 18, freshly out of school, too broke for anything fun that involved gas money, and just bored enough to go looking for trouble. We took my truck as far as the logging road would allow, parked by a rusted old gate that had not been closed in years, and started hiking. We had cheap tents, off-brand flashlights, and a cooler full of warm beer that we were sure would taste better once night fell. The sun was low, slipping between the branches, painting everything that late afternoon gold that makes the forest look harmless. About an hour into the hike, Cole spotted something off to the right, down in a little dip where the trees grew thicker. "Y'all ever seen that trail?" he asked. I looked where he pointed. It was not really a trail. More like a faint path where the ground had been packed down by boots over a long time. No blaze marks, no signs. Just a suggestion of a way through, half hidden by dead leaves. "Nah," I said. "Probably just some old hunter's path." "Old hunter's path is where the deer are," Ray said, "and where the good camping spots are. We should have stayed on the logging cut. Should have kept going to the overlook where we had camped before. But boredom and beer are a bad combination, and none of us wanted to be the one who said no. So we turned off, ducking under low branches, following that barely there path deeper into the trees. It did not feel strange at first, just quieter. The sound of the main trail traffic vanished behind us. No distant ATVs, no voices. Just the crunch of our boots and the occasional call of a crow. The ground sloped down, then flattened out into a hollow that felt cooler than it should have, like the sun could not quite reach it right. That is where I first noticed the ridge line. Up above, you could see the cutout of the trees against the sky, a jagged black line with the orange and red of the setting sun behind it. I remember thinking it looked like teeth. Then a cloud moved across the sun, or that is what I told myself. And the whole line went dark, from left to right, like someone had run a paintbrush of shadow across it. Something in my stomach tightened, a little pinch of instinct. Maybe we should just camp up higher, I said. We go too low, it's gonna get damp. Cole laughed. You scared of a little dew, Tommy boy? I shrugged it off. No one wants to be the cautious one when you are 18 and stupid. We kept going. The smell hit us before anything else did. Not death exactly. Not that sweet rot of something long dead. This was fresher, like blood on iron and wet leather. I could taste it in the back of my throat. Damn, Ray muttered. Somebody's cleaning a deer down here. We stepped into a sort of clearing, if you could call it that. It was more like a spot where the underbrush had been beaten back and the trees seemed to lean away from the center. Tarps were strung between trunks, their camo pattern already faded. Two battered green tents sat half-collapsed near a ring of stones blackened from old fires. And then I saw the hooks. They were hanging from a thick crossbeam someone had lashed between two trees, 6 of them in a row. Big, ugly meat hooks, the kind you see in slaughterhouses, swaying a little in the breeze. There was dried brown on them that I did not want to examine too closely. Jesus, Cole whispered. Guess we found somebody's hunting camp. It was not just the hooks, though. On the nearest tree, somebody had nailed up Polaroids. Dozens of them, overlapping, curling at the edges. Faces stared out from the faded squares, men, women, kids. Some smiling like it was a party. Some looking like mugshots. A few of them had dates scribbled in pen on the white borders. Others just had a single letter. I stepped closer, my chest tight. I recognized one of the faces. A girl from the gas station 2 towns over, the one who had gone missing last year. Her photo from the "Have you seen me" poster had been all over the county. Here she was again, younger in a different shirt, hair pulled back. But it was her. This is not hunting, I said. My voice sounded small in that hollow. Could be somebody just collected news photos, Ray said, uncertainty all over his face. There are no headlines on these, I snapped. Look at the background. That is a house in daylight. Somebody took these themselves. The ridgeline above us went dark again, a smooth erase of the last bit of light. That is when we heard the engine. Not my truck. This was closer, sharper, a pickup grinding its way over rough ground from somewhere beyond the hollow. Headlights flashed through the trees for a second, then disappeared as whoever it was rounded a bend, hidden by brush. Shit, Cole hissed. Hide! We scattered without even discussing it. I dove behind one of the sagging tents, flattening myself into the damp earth. Cole slid in behind a log. Ray ducked behind the tree with the photos on it, which made my heart lurch because it put him too close to the center of camp. The truck pulled up just out of sight, engine idling. I heard doors slam. 2, maybe 3 voices, low and rough. The words not clear, but the tone unmistakable. Easy, like they were home. Boots crunched on leaves. The men came into view. They were not monsters in the way you see in movies. No ski masks, no dripping chainsaws. Just 3 middle-aged guys in hunting jackets, mud on their jeans, caps pulled low. One carried a rifle casually over his shoulder. The other 2 had something between them, a shape they dragged from the bed of the truck. At first I thought it was a deer. Then the shape moved. It was a person, hands bound behind their back, feet tied, a sack over the head. The body bucked once, a muffled sound trying to escape from under the fabric. One of the men kicked the struggling form in the ribs. "Easy now," he said. "You start hollering and you wake the whole damn mountain." They hauled the person over to the hooks. My fingers dug into the ground so hard I felt my nails bend. Every instinct I had screamed at me to jump up, to yell, to do something. But there were 3 of them, and 3 of us. And they had guns. And we had absolutely nothing. The woods suddenly felt as thin as paper between us. "You boys sure no one followed you from town?" Another voice asked. This one was deeper, a little breathless, like the man was heavier. "Ain't nobody coming up here," the first said. "Same as always." Same as always. Ray shifted his weight behind the photo tree. A twig snapped under his boot, loud as a gunshot in the suddenly quiet clearing. All 3 men froze. For a second, nobody moved. I held my breath so long my lungs burned. Then the man with the rifle swung it off his shoulder so fast I almost did not see him do it. "Who's there?" he barked. Silence. The bound person on the ground whimpered under the sack. "Thought you said nobody followed you," the heavier man said softly. No anger in his voice yet. That scared me more than if he had shouted. "All right," the rifleman said. "Come on out, slow, hands where I can see him. We can talk about this." Ray stayed behind the tree. I saw the rifle muzzle swivel toward my friend's hiding place. I saw the man's eyes narrow, tracking that one scrap of wrong in his camp. I could not feel my fingers anymore. The heavier man gestured to the others. "Sweep the tree line. If it is game, we eat. If it is not, we make it so it never went home." They split up. One came my way, boots sinking a little into the soft earth. I pressed myself flatter, biting my tongue to keep from making any sound. He passed within 10 feet of me. I could smell his sweat, the tang of cheap tobacco. On the other side of the clearing, the rifleman stepped around the photo tree. "There you are," he said. What happened next is in pieces in my head, like shards of glass. I remember Ray bolting, making a desperate run for the thicker brush. I remember the crack of the rifle and the way the sound bounced off the hollow walls. I remember something red on the leaves that was not from any deer. Cole and I ran. We did not shout to each other. We did not look back. We exploded out of our hiding spots and tore through the trees toward where we hoped the logging road was, branches whipping our faces, roots grabbing at our ankles. Behind us, someone hollered, another gunshot. Maybe it was a warning shot, maybe it was not. I did not care. I just ran. The ridge line ahead of us flickered. One moment it was just trees. The next it was a solid wall of black. For the 3rd time that day, the mountaintop went dark in a single smooth motion, like an eyelid closing. The men behind us crashed through the undergrowth, cursing. Then their sounds grew distant, muffled, like someone had thrown a blanket over the world. My own footsteps sounded far away. not know how, but we made it back to the logging road. One moment we were half falling down a slope, grabbing saplings to keep from breaking our necks, and the next we were stumbling out onto gravel, my truck sitting there where we left it like something from another life. We did not speak until we were halfway back to town, hands shaking so bad I could barely keep the wheel straight. We did go to the sheriff. We told him what we saw, every ugly detail. He went up there with a couple deputies the next morning. He came back with a face like stone and told us they found a fire ring, some trash, and a couple old tarps, but no hooks, no photos, no truck tracks, no signs of our friend. "You boys sure you were not drinking?" he asked. "You sure Ray did not just wander off mad and go home a different way?" Ray's parents reported him missing. His truck stayed in their driveway. His dog cried at the door for days. They never found him. Sometimes I dream about that hollow. In the dream, I walk into the clearing, and the Polaroids are there again, fresh and bright. I go closer and see new faces tacked up alongside the old ones. In the corner of one picture, half turned away, is me. When the nightmares get real bad, I drive. I take the old logging road all the way to the gate, then sit there with the engine running, staring at the ridgeline. Most nights it just looks like trees against the sky. But twice now, when the light was failing, I saw it happen again. The whole line went dark from left to right, like something was moving along the top of the world, blotting out the day. I do not go past the gate anymore. I do not follow faint paths down into cool hollows. I stay where the maps say I am supposed to be. Believe what you want about ghosts and monsters. I am not here to convince you. I am only telling you that somewhere in those mountains, there are men who use the forest like a curtain, and something up on that ridge that helps them close it. And if you ever see the tree line go dark all at once, you turn around. You do not want to end up on that tree. My sister's voice did not come back to me as a ghost story. It came back as a wrong word. The first night I heard it, I was sitting on the low stone wall that separates our family graves from the tree line, tracing the dates on her headstone with my thumb. The sun had finished bleeding out behind the ridge, and that blue hour was creeping down the slope, one shadow at a time. Crickets, a few distant dogs, the soft clink of my mother washing dishes in our house up the hill. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Then, clear as if she was standing in the woods 3 feet away, I heard my sister say my name. Bella. That was normal. That was what she always called me. What was not normal was the breath that followed, like she was running, and the way the words stretched out into the trees. Bella. Help. My whole body locked up. I did not stand. I did not run. I just sat there on the stone and turned my head towards the dark line of trunks. When she disappeared, people from town said it was a man, a truck, a bad decision. They said it in low voices, and looked at my parents like we were already a funeral. The sheriff's report called it foul play suspected. The news mentioned the bloody shirt they found by the logging road, folded like laundry and left on the ditch bank. But there was always one small detail that did not fit the story they preferred to tell. The dogs never caught a scent that left the road. Every tracking hound they brought in circled, whined, and kept trying to pull back towards the trees. Like whatever had taken her had not driven away. Like it had walked. We buried an empty casket a year later, because you are supposed to. You are supposed to give grief a shape and a place. Her headstone sits closest to the woods, because she loved the trees, my mother said. I did not argue, but that was not why. It was because we all knew that if there was even one piece of her left, anywhere in this world, it was out there, under those branches. "Bella," the voice called again from the hollow. Softer this time. "Please. If you have ever lost someone and then heard them where they could not possibly be, you will understand this part. There is a moment where your mind tries to put on brakes, to explain, to rationalize. Wind in the leaves, kids playing on the next road over, a memory bubbling up and spilling over into sound. And then there is your heart. That stupid old traitor, jumping at the chance to believe. I slid off the stone wall without remembering I had decided to move. My hand brushed the cold top of her headstone as I stepped into the grass. It felt like letting go of something that could never hold me back. The tree line was only 20 or 30 steps away. The ground dropped off quick into our family hollow, where the land dips and folds in on itself before climbing towards the ridge. When we were younger, my sister and I played there for hours, building forts out of deadfall and pretending the creek was a moat. My mother always shouted from the porch for us to be back before it got blue dark. That specific shade you only get in the mountains when the last light is still up on the ridges, but the hollows are already night. It was blue dark now. The ridge still glowed faintly. Under the trees, everything was already 2 shades closer to black. I did not bring a flashlight. I did not think to. "Where are you?" I called. My voice came out small, like I was 10 again. "Over here," the voice answered. It was further down the hollow, near where the old logging road used to cross the creek before it washed out. I fell. The words were right, but the rhythm was wrong. My sister always talked fast, stepping on the ends of her own sentences like she was late to finish them. This voice left space between each syllable, like it was tasting them. That bothered me enough that I stopped at the first big oak and put my hand on its trunk. The bark was rough and solid under my palm, a real thing in a place that suddenly did not feel real at all. "Say my middle name," I said. I do not know why that is what came out. Maybe because she used it to annoy me when we fought. Silence. Then a soft laugh, too low. "You are being stupid, Issa. Just come help me. My middle name is not Issa. It never has been." She knew that. She weaponized it. She would wait until my friends were around and then sing it like a song. The whole ridiculous 3-syllable thing my grandmother chose. My cheeks would burn and she would grin, and then we would wrestle on the living room floor until my mother yelled and my father separated us like puppies. If that had been her, she would have said it right, and she would have thrown it back in my face like she always did, because older sisters do not pass up a chance to embarrass you. My hand stayed on the oak. I realized, suddenly and with a kind of cold clarity, that I could not hear the house anymore. No dishes, no TV, no dogs. Even the crickets sounded like they had stepped back a few yards, as if they did not want to be too close to whatever was about to happen. "I cannot see you," I said. "Come closer." Branches shifted further down the hollow. Leaves rustled. It did not sound like one person moving. It sounded like several, all pushing against each other, all just out of sight. "Please," the voice said. "Please, it hurts." It had the right amount of breath in it, the right note of pain. It was trying very, very hard. "I am getting a flashlight," I heard myself say, and I stepped backward, hand still on the trunk, like that touch was the only thing keeping me anchored. The oak felt warmer now, like someone holding my palm from the other side of thick cloth. I did not want to let go. I did anyway. The moment I turned my back on the woods, the air changed. Not the temperature, that stayed cool, almost damp, but the pressure. It It felt like being underwater and suddenly breaking the surface. Sounds rushed back. A car on the highway. My father's laugh from the porch. My mother's voice calling my name, faint but real. I walked, not ran, back up to the house. I told myself that if I ran, it meant I believed there was something to run from. Inside, my parents were at the kitchen table with a spread of bills and a pot of coffee between them. They both looked up when I came in. "You were out by her stone again," my mother said. Not a question. "Yeah," I answered. "I thought I heard..." I stopped. If I said it, it became a thing that existed outside my head. My father's jaw tightened. "You are not going in those woods at night alone," he said. That was all. I did not tell them that I already had, halfway. I did not tell them that the woods had spoken back. The second night, I did bring a flashlight. I waited until they were both asleep in front of the TV. The sound low, the blue glow painting their faces. I took the small mag light from the junk drawer and walked back down to the family plot. This time, I did not sit. I stood by her stone and waited. I did not have to wait long. "Bella," the voice called from the hollow, almost eager. "You came back." I switched on the flashlight and aimed it straight into the trees. The beam cut through one narrow slice of the dark, showing trunks and leaves and nothing else. "Where are you?" I asked. "By the old road," it said. I cannot move my legs. The old road had been washed out long before we were born. You could still find bits of it if you knew where to look. Chunks of crumbled asphalt, an old mile marker eaten by moss. My sister and I had used it as a landmark in our games. If the monster chased you past the marker, you were safe. Tonight, the idea of walking that far down there alone made my stomach turn. "Tell me what we buried with you," I said. Silence again, longer this time. Finally, the voice said, "Flowers." We had put flowers on the closed lid, yes. But my father had sneaked something else in when he thought no one was looking. A small, ugly ceramic frog she had painted in second grade. It sat on her nightstand for years, staring with lopsided eyes at anyone who came into her room. He palmed it and slid it into the crook of the coffin like he was tucking her in one last time. The thing in the hollow did not know that. "You are not her," I said. My throat hurt. I realized I had been holding my breath. Leaves shivered. Something like a sigh moved through the trees, not from one direction, but from many. The voice, when it came back, was not trying as hard. "You want her?" it said. "That is enough." For a moment, the beam of my flashlight picked up something pale between the trunks. Not a face. Faces have features, angles, shadows. This was more like a cutout in the dark that the light did not quite penetrate, a shape standing where no tree grew, the size of a person in clothes that hung wrong on its frame. It stepped sideways, just enough that I could see the gap it left behind was not the right shape either. I did not ask any more questions. I did not challenge it. I backed away, slow and careful, until my calves hit the stone wall. Then I turned and walked straight to the house, the beam shaking in my hand. That should have been the end of it. I should have stopped going down there at night. I should have told my parents. I should have done a lot of things. What I did instead was start listening. Over the next weeks, the voice changed. It switched between Bella and Isabella, sometimes dragging one out, sometimes chopping the other short, like it was trying on different fits. It started using phrases my sister actually used, things that made my chest ache. Quit being dramatic. You are fine. Come on, do not be like that. At first, that made it worse. Then, it made it scarier. Because some of those phrases were not things she had said to me in front of the woods. She had said them in her room, door half closed, music playing low. She had said them into the phone, laughing. She had said them in the truck cab on the night she disappeared, when I refused to sneak out with her, and she called me a coward and told me I would regret being so boring. I had heard that last one because she left the window cracked, and her voice carried back into the house. If the thing in the hollow knew that tone, knew that cadence, it meant it had been listening for a long time. The last time I answered it was in late November, when the leaves were mostly down and the bones of the trees showed against the sky. The air had that brittle cold that makes sound travel further than it should. I stood at the edge of the plot, arms wrapped around myself, and listened to it call. Bella, I am cold. You're in the ground, I said. Whatever is out there is not you. You are wrong. The voice sounded almost annoyed now, like it was tired of playing. I am where you left me. I am where they folded me up. I am where the dogs turned away. It should not have known about the dogs. My mother never talked about that part. I stared into the dark until my eyes watered. Somewhere down in the hollow, a creek gurgled over rocks, the same way it always had. Somewhere further up, an owl called. Normal sounds. Safe sounds, if you did not know better. What do you want? I asked. The woods went quiet. I mean, truly quiet. The kind of silence that pushes in on your ears. When the answer came, it came from closer than it should have. I want you to come where I am, it said. They brought me here. You can walk. Something moved. Not down the hollow now, but up, towards the family plot. Dry leaves shifted, then stopped. I shone the flashlight and caught a glimpse of bare toes disappearing behind a tree. Skin the color of riverstone. That broke whatever thin thread had kept me rooted there. I ran. I did not care about what running meant. I did not care about dignity or proof. I bolted for the porch, up the steps, through the door, and locked it behind me. My mother woke at the noise. I lied and said, I thought I saw a coyote. She told me to stay inside when it was dark. I promised I would. I have kept that promise. It has been 6 years. I go to her stone in daylight now. I bring flowers, and once, when nobody was looking, I brought a cheap ceramic frog I found at a yard sale that looked almost like the one she made. I set it on the grass and tucked it half under the headstone. It felt right. On certain nights, when the fog comes down from the ridge and sits low in the hollow, I stand at my bedroom window and listen. The sound carries up through the trees, thin and stretched, like it is coming from the bottom of a well. Sometimes it calls my name right. Sometimes it gets it wrong. Lately, it has started using words my sister never would have used. Older phrases, old names for the creek and the ridge that only my grandfather used to say. It is learning new tricks, or maybe it is getting bored with the old ones. People still ask me if I think she died that night by the road. If I think some man did what men like that do and then left her in a ditch somewhere the dogs missed. I tell them yes, because that is the story they can live with. The story I live with is different. I think something in those woods took what it could of her, the sound of her, the shape of her words, and kept them. I think it listened while we cried and prayed and shouted her name into the trees. I think it learned us like a language. And I think, on nights when the fog is thick and the hollow fills up with blue dark, it is still down there, practicing, waiting for someone else who misses someone enough to follow a familiar voice into the trees. If that is ever you, if you ever stand at the edge of the woods and hear the exact person you lost calling your name from where they cannot be, remember this: real people cannot come back from where she went. But something else can walk to the edge and talk like them. And it does not always get the words wrong. My grandfather used to say the roots know more names than the headstones ever will. He said it like a joke, rocking on that old porch swing, but he never laughed after. Just watched the tree line like it might answer back. I did not understand what he meant until the day I went looking for help under the laurel thickets. My name is Julian, and if you grow up poor in these mountains, you get used to the land taking things from you. Jobs, crops, sometimes people. What I was not prepared for was the land offering something back. It started with my mother's lungs. The doctor in town said words like idiopathic and progression and we will manage symptoms. But I heard what he did not say. There is a tone folks get when they are trying not to say, "This is just going to get worse." I heard it every time he looked at her chart instead of her face. She could not climb the porch steps without stopping to catch her breath. I picked up every odd job I could, hauling, fixing, working nights at a warehouse an hour away. But the bills ate through my paychecks faster than I could stack them. I lay awake listening to her cough through the thin wall, counting the seconds between breaths like it might add up to a solution. That was when I started thinking about Granddad's stories. He used to talk about root men in the old days. Not witches, not exactly. Men who knew where the oldest roots surfaced, where the earth came closest to the skin of the world. Folks would go to them when they needed something the church could not give. Luck, healing, revenge. You paid in something that mattered, he said. The mountain does not take paper money. I always thought he meant it metaphorical. Old superstition to put a little spine into us when we talk too big. But after the third notice from the hospital and the second time my mother coughed so hard she almost blacked out at the kitchen table, metaphor did not feel like enough anymore. The first sign was on the fence. We have got a rotting stretch of rail along the back of our property line, where the posts lean like drunk old men and the wire sags halfway to the ground. One morning, walking back there to check for downed branches, I saw a mark carved into the gray wood. Not initials. Not the usual teenage nonsense. It was a circle with 3 lines dropping from the bottom like roots. I had seen that shape before, in Granddad's stories. He drew it in the dirt with his cane when he talked about the root men sign. The mark you left if you were willing to trade. There was a second mark cut into the weakest post, pointing downslope into the trees. Somebody could have been screwing with me. Kids with YouTube and too much time. But this was carved deep, with something sharp and patient, and nobody in our family had mentioned people on the land. Our nearest neighbor was a half-mile away and did not walk well enough to be carving signs on fences in the dark. I stared at that mark for a long time. Then I went back to the house, listened to my mother wheeze in her sleep, and made my decision. The path the mark pointed to was not a path, not at first, just a suggestion, a place where the undergrowth seemed to thin. The further I followed it, the more deliberate it looked. Blackberry canes arched away from my face. Roots that should have been ankle breakers lay flat enough underfoot that I did not trip. About 15 minutes down, the air changed. Cooler, wet like breath on glass. The trees opened into a clearing ringed with mountain laurel. their twisted branches forming something that felt too much like a doorway. In the center of the clearing, the roots of a great old oak had grown up and out of the ground, curling into shapes that looked almost like seats. Glass jars hung from the lower branches on twine, some empty, some filled with cloudy liquid, and things that looked like stones or teeth sunk at the bottom. Little bones lay half buried in the dirt, not animal small, not human big, something in between. I knew, without knowing how, that I had walked into a place people were not supposed to find on accident. "You are late," a voice said. It came from the shade beneath the oak. For a second, I thought it was just the wind moving through the jars, making them clink and hum. Then something stood up from the shadow. He looked like part of the tree at first. Bark-colored coat, pants the color of dirt, hat pulled low. Moss clung to his shoulders and sleeves like it had decided to grow there. His face was the only thing that was plain skin, and even that looked like it had been outside too long. "You have your granddaddy's walk," he said, heavy on the heel. I almost turned and left right then. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the creak I could hear somewhere under the laurel. But leaving would not fix my mother's lungs, and he knew that. I could see it in the way he watched me, like he was counting my options same as I was. "I need help," I said, because there was no point dressing it up. "My mama is sick." "All uphill from here," he replied. "Hospital, pills, prayers. You have done that road." "Yes." "Did not change the ending much, did it?" "No." He nodded, as if I had answered a test question correctly. "The roots can take some of the weight," he said. "They have before. But nothing leaves this ground empty-handed." He tapped his boot on the dirt between us. "You understand?" I thought about my life, about what I had to give. No money, no property worth mentioning. My own years did not feel like much of a bargaining chip. I would have thrown them into the fire gladly. "What do you want?" I asked. He smiled then, and his teeth were too even for a man who lived with moss on his coat. "Someone is already marked," he said. "Someone up on that ridge does not belong here. The mountain has been whispering their name through the roots for a while now, but it is not polite to take without an invitation." He tilted his head at me. "You give the roots leave to balance what should not be, and your mama breathes easier. That is the trade." My mouth went dry. "You are asking me to choose who dies?" He shrugged. "You think anybody up there cares who chokes on a ventilator in your little house? The mountain is older than their maps. It knows its own. It knows its strangers. It just needs a voice to say, 'Go on then.'" I thought of the tourists who came through in the fall, leaf peepers with their cameras and their loud voices. I thought of the pipeline men, the out-of-state plates on the trucks that carved scars into the hillsides. I thought of my mother's thin hands gripping the table when a coughing fit hit. "I do not know their names," I said. "The roots do," he replied. "You do not have to point." It was a coward's bargain, I knew that. If I said yes, someone whose face I did not know might slip on wet rock, or their brake line might fail on a sharp curve, or they might just wander off trail and never find their way back. I would never have to see their eyes go still. But I would see my mother climb the porch steps without stopping. I did not say the word yes. I just did not say no. The root man nodded like he had heard it anyway. He reached down, scooped up a handful of earth from between the oak's roots, and pressed it into my palm. It was cold, and something in it pulsed once against my skin. "Put that under her bed," he said. "By the headboard. Do not move the bed for 3 days. Do not ask the mountain who it takes." We do not discuss the other side of the ledger. I walked home with that dirt burning a hole in my hand. 2 days later, a hiker from out of state slipped near Buckthorn Ridge and fell into a ravine. The search and rescue team found him broken on the rocks at the bottom, long after the life had left him. People said it was a tragedy. The news mentioned how beautiful the view was and how dangerous it could be if you did not respect the edge. That same week, my mother's cough changed. It did not vanish, this is not a fairy tale, but it eased. She could make it up the porch steps without stopping. She could talk on the phone with my aunt without losing her breath every other sentence. When we went back to the doctor, he frowned at the scans and said words like unexpected stabilization and, Madame, maybe we misjudged the progression. I did not tell him about the dirt under her bed, which had turned hard as stone when I slid it back out after 3 days. It looked like the kind of river rock you find deep in shaded creeks, worn smooth by time. Sometimes, when I am dead tired after a shift and the house is quiet, I swear I can hear something moving under the floorboards. A faint creak, like roots adjusting their grip. I tell myself it is just the house settling, old timber, old pipes. Then I remember the hiker's obituary. He had a name. He had a family up north who thought these mountains were just a weekend scenery change. They posted a picture of him smiling at some overlook from the year before. In the background of that photo, if you squint, you can see the faint line of our ridge. I have not gone back to the clearing since. But sometimes, when I walk the back fence, I run my fingers along the old posts. A few of them feel smoother now, like something has been rubbing against them from the inside of the wood. Maybe the roots do know more names than the headstones. Maybe one of those names is mine. Written somewhere under the laurel, waiting for the balance to tilt back. The mountain does not take paper money. It takes what you can live without until you realize you cannot. I lied to the police about what I saw on Switchback Road. I told them it was dark, that I was tired, that I must have misjudged the distance. That was the version they wrote down. The real version is the one that still watches me every night when I drive home from the hospital. My name is Hannah, and for 8 years I've worked nights as a nurse in a small Appalachian town where the mountains start right at the edge of the parking lot. The road I take home curls up and around those slopes. 3 tight switchbacks in a row with nothing but a low guardrail and a long drop between you and a forest that never seems to end. People warn each other about deer on that road, about black ice in winter, drunk drivers on weekends. Nobody warns you about the lights. It was a Tuesday in late November, the kind of cold that turns breath into smoke the moment you step outside. I had just finished a 12-hour shift on the medical floor, the kind where every room is full and every monitor alarm feels like it is wired directly into your spine. I remember rubbing the bridge of my nose as I started the car, feeling the ache behind my eyes, promising myself I would sleep straight through until dusk. The first switchback came and went like always. Guardrail, drop, a glimpse of the town lights below. I know that curve so well I could probably drive it with my eyes closed. It was on the second turn that I noticed them. At first, I thought they were deer eyes in the ditch. 2 bright points of reflected light just off the asphalt on the right, about where the embankment starts to slope. I eased off the gas, ready for the sudden panic of a deer bolting in front of me. Only, the eyes did not move. They did not blink either. I rolled closer, maybe 30 miles an hour, squinting through the windshield. As the car crept forward, more of them appeared between the trees above the ditch. 2 more, then 4, then 6. Each pair at the same height off the ground, all facing the road. It was like driving past a row of invisible people holding mirrors at head level. My headlights washed over them, and they stayed exactly the same. Steady, white-yellow points. Animal eyes flash and change as they catch the beam from different angles. These did not. A pressure settled in my chest. It felt like standing in a room where everyone has stopped talking at once. "Okay, no," I muttered. My voice sounded too loud in the car. I reached for the radio and got a mouthful of static. Not a song trying to come through, not the usual fading in and out from mountain interference. Just a solid sheet of white noise that swallowed the DJ mid-sentence. My phone, plugged into the charger, went from 50% to a black screen with a dead battery symbol in less than a minute. I told myself it was the cold, bad wires, bad luck. Anything but the thought that chewed at the back of my brain, that maybe whatever I was looking at did not want me calling anyone. As I hit the midpoint of the curve, the ditch on my right leveled out into a narrow stretch of flat ground. That is when I saw that the lights were not just by the roadside. They were up the slope too, in straight vertical lines between the trees. 2 by the ditch, 4 above them, 6 higher still, all perfectly spaced, like someone had drawn a grid on the mountain and pinned a pair of eyes at each intersection. They did not move. They did not blink. But I had the sickening impression that they were following my car, not by turning, but by somehow always being exactly where they needed to be, to look straight into my windshield. There is a moment when fear stops you from breathing. Mine hit right as the engine shuddered. The dashboard lights flickered. The car jerked once, twice, like it was going to stall. My foot instinctively slammed on the gas, stupid, I know, on a mountain curve. But the engine caught and roared a little louder, as if in protest. The steering felt sluggish, like I was pushing through water. "Keep going, keep going, keep going," I whispered to the wheel, like it could hear me. I did not look at the lights again. I kept my gaze on the double yellow line, on the tiny slice of asphalt illuminated ahead. Out of the corner of my eye, I could still feel them. Rows and rows of watching points, climbing the slope and maybe the opposite slope too, turning the whole hollow into a kind of corridor. When I finally rounded the bend and hit the straight stretch that leads toward the third switchback, the radio snapped back to life mid-song. My phone screen lit up with a charging symbol like nothing had happened. The engine smoothed out. The air in my chest loosened. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had half convinced myself exhaustion had turned deer into demons. 2 days later, my co-worker Carla did not show up for our shift. Carla is not the type to no call, no show. She texted if she was going to be 5 minutes late. When the charge nurse called her phone, it went straight to voicemail. Her husband had not seen her since she left for night shift the evening before. She drove the same road I did. The sheriff's deputies found her car on the second switchback, nose against the guardrail, driver's side door open. No skid marks, no sign of impact. Her purse still in the passenger seat, her phone dead on the floor mat. They searched the woods for 3 days. Dogs, volunteers, the whole small-town swarm of people who care, because it might be them next. They did not find a body. They did not find her shoes. They did not find anything but some broken twigs leading a few yards into the trees before they just stopped. When they asked me, in a cramped interview room that smelled like old coffee, if I had noticed anything strange on that road that week, I had a choice. I could tell them about the lights. I could tell them about the radio dying, about the feeling of being watched by something that did not need to move to follow you. I could watch the skepticism slide over their faces as they wrote that down and decided I was tired, stressed, maybe in need of a wellness check myself. Or I could be the sensible night shift nurse who knew better than to bring ghost stories into a missing person case. I did not see anything, I said. It was just another night. One of the deputies, a man I went to high school with, gave me a look like he knew I was holding something back. I met his eyes and held the lie steady until he looked away. The thing about lying is that it does not erase what happened. It just relocates the weight. I carried it with me every shift after that. Every time I glanced at the clock and calculated how dark the mountain would be when I drove home. A week later, the sheriff brought me into his office. He closed the door, which he never does, and set a laptop on the desk between us. "We pulled this off Carla's dash cam before the battery died," he said. "I want you to tell me what you see." The footage was dark and grainy, the way cheap cameras always are. I recognized the curve by the angle of the guardrail, the shape of the trees. Headlights swept the ditch, the embankment, the slope. Then they touched the first pair of lights. On video, they were washed out white points, blown slightly by the glare. No color, no weight. But as the car moved, the headlights caught more. 2, 4, 6. Exactly where I remembered them. Exactly in those same neat lines. Up the slope, between the trunks. Like someone had installed rows of reflectors in a place where no human had bothered to put even a warning sign. There were no bodies, no shapes, just the lights, unwavering. At the moment where my radio had died, Carla's did too. The audio cut to a flat hum. The timestamp at the bottom of the screen slowed for a second, the seconds ticking over too hesitantly, as if the device itself did not want to mark time in that stretch. "Could be lens flare," the sheriff said. "Could be," I answered. He watched my face more than the screen. "You sure you did not see anything out there, Hannah?" I swallowed. My tongue felt too big in my mouth. "I saw what you saw," I said carefully. "Light doing something I do not understand." He accepted that, wrote something down, closed the laptop. Later, the footage corrupted. That is what they told the news when people asked why it was not being used to help find her. The copy I saw was the only one that came out clean. Or maybe that is what I tell myself. So I do not have to imagine whoever, or whatever, was behind those lights watching itself on replay. It has been a year. Carla's husband moved away. Her case file sits somewhere in a drawer under the heading, "Missing Presumed Dead." The road did not change. The curves still snake up the mountain. The guardrail still shimmers in my headlights. Deer still dart across when you least want them to. The lights are still there. They do not show up every night. Sometimes weeks go by where that stretch is nothing but darkness and the usual reflectors. But then, on a random Tuesday or a foggy Friday, they appear again in my peripheral vision, already arranged, already waiting before my car even reaches the bend. I tried another route for a while, a longer way home that added 20 minutes to an exhausted commute. The third night, a rock slide closed it off. A week later, black ice spun me halfway around on a supposedly safer road. I ended up back on switchback without meaning to, hands sweating on the wheel, heart punching my ribs. Now, I drive it every night. I keep the radio off. I keep my phone face down. When the lights appear, I do not stare at them. I let them sit at the edge of my vision like lines of spectators at a race I never signed up for. Here is the part I have not told anyone. They are getting closer. At first, they stayed on that second switchback, lined up nice and tidy along the embankment. Now, once or twice, I have seen a pair much earlier on the road, in a patch of trees that never used to hold anything but shadow. A month ago, one single pair appeared at the edge of the hospital parking lot, high up in the tree line, gone when I blinked, but leaving me cold all the same. Maybe I lied to the police because I did not think anybody could help. Maybe I lied because I was afraid they would believe me and decide I was the one who needed locking up. Or maybe I lied because the moment I told the truth out loud, whatever is lining that mountain with eyes would know my name the way I know Carla's. And I am not ready to feel that many lights turn, all at once, to look straight at me. If you ever drive Switchback Road at night and your radio dies for no reason, do yourself a favor. Do not slow down to see what is watching you. Some things in these mountains do not chase. They do not need to. They just stand in the dark, and sooner or later, you come to them. If you pause the footage right at the 9-minute mark, you can see the window I am talking about. Look close at the top right corner. There should not be a second story on that cabin, but there it is. Glass reflecting a light that is not ours. My name is Marcus, and I used to run a tiny YouTube channel with 2 friends, the kind that does urban exploration on places that are not really urban and definitely should not be explored. We specialized in Appalachia deep woods challenges, hiking to old mine ruins, forgotten cemeteries, bootlegger sites, clickable titles, scary thumbnails, lots of shaky night vision. It was dumb and reckless, and for a while, the most alive I ever felt. The cabin changed that. The legend was simple. There was a hunter's cabin somewhere off Crooked Branch Hollow that only appeared if you got lost. People swore they had stumbled on it after wandering in circles, staying the night there and waking up to find nothing but trees where the door should have been. Great for a video, right? A cabin that does not exist. We planned it like we always did. 3 of us, me, Tyler, and Nate. 2 cameras, spare batteries, GPS on our phones, compass, printed topo map. We would hike off the marked trail, deliberately ignore the map after a point, and see if anything weird happened. Worst case, we get lost for a bit, camp, and hike out in the morning with a spooky story about strange sounds for the viewers. From the start, the woods did not feel right. The compass needle spun in slow circles like it had lost the idea of north. The GPS location on my phone jumped 50 yards at a time, dropping our blue dot in places where there was no trail at all, then snapping back. We laughed it off, called it classic horror movie vibes, and kept going. After a couple hours, the trees started to repeat. I do not mean they all looked the same, so it felt repetitive. I mean we kept passing the same crooked birch with a lightning scar in its trunk, the same 3 stones clustered like knuckles on the ground, the same fallen log with a notch that looked like a bite out of it. Tyler picked up a crushed beer can and put it in his pack. 20 minutes later, we stepped over that exact same can in the exact same position. "We are looping," Nate said. "We must be circling something." Right after he said that, we saw the chimney. It poked up through the tree line ahead of us, made of dark stone that did not match any rock around. As we pushed through the undergrowth, the rest of the cabin came into view. A steep roof, gray boards, a crooked porch. No path leading to it, no cleared ground around it. Just the structure sitting in a bowl of trees like it had grown there. Tyler whooped, all exhaustion gone. "We actually found it. Dude, this thumbnail is going to slap." We filmed everything, like always. Wide shot, close-ups, me doing our usual intro about found footage in the real deep woods of Appalachia. The cabin looked old but not rotten. The boards were weathered but solid. Windows unbroken, doors shut and slightly warped in its frame. Someone had carved shapes into the porch rail, little X's and circles, a few stick figure men with no heads. "Ready?" Tyler asked, his hand on the door latch. Camera pointed at his own face for dramatic effect. The footage we uploaded later cuts right there. One frame of his hand on the latch, then jump. Suddenly, we are all inside. Dust motes in the air, our flashlights swinging around bare walls. But that is not how I remember it. In my memory, the door stuck. We had to shoulder it open together. When it finally gave, it did not swing into a small one-room cabin like the footage shows. It opened onto a hallway that should not have fit inside, long and narrow, with doorways on either side. The air smelled like earth and something chemical, sharp enough to sting my nose. I remember a set of stairs at the far end, going down instead of up. Treads worn in the middle, as if many feet had used them. Tyler laughed and said, "Basement episode, let's go," and clattered down with his camera. Nate followed. I stayed at the top of the stairs for a few seconds, filming the jars on a shelf by the wall. They were lined up neatly, all the same size, lids rusted. Something pale and cloudy floated in each one, turning slowly like it was trying to face the light. I did not want to think about what it was. "Marcus, you seeing this?" Tyler called up. His voice sounded further away than it should have, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. I put my foot on the first step, and then I was outside. No transition, no stumble, no cut in my memory. 1 second, my weight was tipping forward into that stairwell. The next second, my boots were on dead leaves, and I was standing 10 feet from the cabin, camera in my hand, pointing at the front door. Tyler and Nate were next to me, breathing hard like they had been running. The sun had shifted, shadows were longer. My watch said we had been there for nearly 3 hours, but the footage on my camera, from the moment we first touched the door to that moment outside, amounted to 14 minutes and change. "Did you just lose time?" Nate asked quietly. Tyler ignored the question, already slipping into performance mode. "We are getting the hell out of here," he said into his lens, voice shaking just enough to sell it. "Something is not right. We are going back to camp." We backed away from the cabin without turning our backs on it, the way you do with a dog you do not trust. As the trees thickened between us, I saw movement in the upper window. A flicker, like someone stepping aside just as I tried to get a clear look. On the hike out, we kept tripping over places we had not seen before. A creek, a rock outcrop. But somehow they all led us downhill, towards the logging road. The compass started working again a half mile from the truck. GPS snapped back to the trail. We made stupid jokes about glitches in the matrix to cover the fact that all 3 of us were shaking. That night, in my apartment, I loaded the footage onto my laptop. Every time someone stepped toward the cabin door, the video skipped. Little jumps forward, Tyler reaching for the latch, then all of us already inside. Me lifting my camera toward the stairwell, then a smear of motion, and we are outside again. No hallway, no basement, no jars. I called Nate. He had the same gaps on his camera. Tyler's files were identical. "Maybe we just freaked ourselves out," he said. "Maybe there was no basement. We got in, saw it was nothing, left." "Then why can I picture the stairs?" Nate whispered. "Why do I remember someone down there knocking from inside the walls?" Tyler stopped answering our group chat a week later. His roommate found him in their bathroom, pills scattered on the tile, music still playing in the living room. The note he left did not mention the cabin. It did mention not being able to sleep because something under the floor kept knocking, always 3 times, always just as he was drifting off. After the funeral, I deleted the cabin footage from my hard drive, or I tried to. The progress bar stalled at 99% and then vanished. The files were gone when I checked the folder. I emptied the recycle bin. I smashed the SD card with a hammer for good measure. 2 months later, during a thunderstorm, my TV turned itself on at 3 in the morning. The screen stayed black for a second, then flickered to a paused image. Frame 9 minutes and 3 seconds. Timestamp burned into the corner. The cabin window, upper right. A reflection in the glass that might have been trees, or might have been a face turned away. I unplugged the TV from the wall. The picture stayed for a full 3 seconds before it blinked out. The channel is dead now. No more uploads, no more Deep Woods challenges. People in the comments still ask what happened to us, why we stopped right when the views were finally climbing. I let them make up their own stories. Copyright claim, demon, creative burnout. This is the version I do not post anywhere. If there is one thing I learned from that cabin, it is that not all empty places are truly empty, and not everything that happens to you wants to be recorded. Some things bend your memories and your footage to match whatever shape they want. Whatever we walked into up there let us leave, in a way. It let us keep enough to be scared. It took enough to make sure we could never prove any of it. And sometimes, when storms roll over the ridge and the lights flicker, I get the sick feeling that the cabin is closer than it was. Like the woods rearrange themselves a little to bring it nearer to town. If your screen ever freezes on an image of a window you do not recognize, and you swear you never filmed it, do yourself a favor. Do not hit play. Here is a little test you can do if you ever move to a hollow in these mountains. Pull up your house on a map app and drop a pin. Screenshot it. Then, 6 months later, check if the pin still lines up with where your front door feels like it is. My name is Patrick, and the last time I checked, my cabin was not on any map anymore. After my marriage fell apart, I wanted 3 things: quiet, distance, and cheap rent. A guy at the hospital told me about a place his cousin owned way out past the old strip mine. A 1-bedroom cabin that sat at the end of a rutted lane, surrounded by trees and nothing else. It is perfect if you do not mind being alone, he said. You will hear your own heartbeat out there. That sounded like heaven. The first night it was. No traffic, no upstairs neighbors stomping around, no ex-wife's voice bleeding through the walls. Just rain on the metal roof and the occasional low hoot of an owl. I unpacked slowly, set up my laptop on the little kitchen table, and told myself this was where I would rebuild. The cabin itself was nothing special. 1 big main room with a stove and sink at one end, a couch and wood stove at the other. Small bedroom off the side, bathroom with questionable plumbing. It had that musty, shut up for a few seasons smell. But a day of open windows and a scrub brush took care of most of it. The woods around it were what sold me. Thick oaks and poplar, laurel higher up, mossy rocks. A narrow, faint trail led downhill toward a creek. On the second day, I followed it for an hour, then came back and fell asleep on the couch with the door open, breeze moving the curtains like slow breaths. The first strange thing was small, easy to ignore. I hung my keys on a nail by the door, went to shower, came back, and found them on the table. I assumed I misremembered. A week later, I set my coffee mug on the counter, turned to grab my bag, turned back, and the mug was already on the table by the laptop. Where I was headed, where I would have put it. You are losing it, man, I told my reflection in the bathroom mirror that night. Sleep more. I slept. The cabin did not. About 3 weeks in, I started hearing footsteps on the porch late at night. Not the heavy clomp of a person in boots, more like bare feet, quick and light, pacing from one end of the boards to the other. Every time I got up to look, the sound stopped. I would open the door to nothing but cold air and trees. One night around 2 in the morning, the pacing stopped right outside the door, and I heard a soft, breathy chuckle, like someone amused with themselves. I did not open the door that time. I sat on the couch, every light on, and waited until dawn turned the windows gray. I told myself it was raccoons, foxes, coyotes, anything but the mental image of a person standing there, ear pressed to the wood. The cabin got helpful after that. I would think about making coffee, and when I walked into the kitchen, the kettle would already be sitting on the burner, lid off. I had no memory of taking it out. I would reach for a book I wanted to reread, and it would already be laying on the arm of the couch instead of on the shelf. Once, I came home from the store, arms full of groceries, and the chair at the table was already pulled back, angled toward the window where I like to sit. At first, I appreciated it. Who would not want a house that anticipates you? I chalked it up to routine, to my own muscle memory. Maybe I set those things up and just forgot. Long shifts, stress, easy explanation. Then it started anticipating things I had not done before. On a rainy Saturday, I sat on the couch scrolling on my phone, feeling restless. I thought, completely idly, that I should rearrange the furniture so the couch faced the wood stove instead of the window. I did not stand up. I did not move a thing. I just imagined it, the way you think. I should paint that wall someday. I fell asleep like that. When I woke up, the couch had moved. The coffee table, too. The whole seating area had rotated 90 degrees to face the stove. My books that had been stacked on the floor were neatly lined up along the wall by the new orientation. There were faint drag marks in the wood and a scuff on the rug, as if something had nudged and tugged and gotten everything just so. I checked the door. Still locked from the inside. Windows latched. No muddy footprints. No sign of anyone else. It felt, all at once, like waking up in someone else's house. I should have left then. Called my buddy and begged his couch for a while. Instead, I laughed too hard, the sound bouncing off the low ceiling. "Okay, haunted house," I said out loud. "I get it. You are quirky." Talking to it made it worse. The more I acknowledged it, the bolder it got. I would mutter, I should go for a walk. And 10 minutes later, when I stepped outside, there would be a faint, newly trodden path leading off to the left where there had not been one before. Grass bent, leaves disturbed. If I followed it, it would take me somewhere I had never seen. A little pool tucked between rocks, a hollow full of ferns. A view of the hollow I did not know existed. I never saw anyone else on those paths. I never saw any sign of boots, just my own prints if I doubled back. The footsteps at night changed. Instead of pacing, whatever it was started circling the cabin. Tap, tap on one wall, then the next, then the back. Always the same pattern. 4 sides, 2 taps per wall, a slow orbit. One evening, after a long, bad day at work, I came home angry. The hospital had cut hours, my ex had texted something venomous, and my brain would not shut up. As I unlocked the door, I thought. Not said, just thought. I wish I did not have to go back out there. I wish I could just stay here and let the world handle itself. The words had barely finished forming in my head when something answered from the far corner of the main room. "You can." The voice was mine. It sounded exactly like me, down to the lazy drawl I hate hearing on recordings. It came from the darker patch near the wood stove, where the light from the kitchen did not quite reach. I could not see anything there but shadow and the outline of the chair. Every hair on my arms rose. My own voice echoed in my ears, something wrong in the timing, like the cabin had needed half a second to process the sentence before speaking. I did not say anything back. I walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed until my heartbeat slowed. Through the wall, I heard the soft scrape of wood on wood, as if a chair was being turned to face the door. After that, I started trying to prove to myself that it was all in my head. First, the map. I pulled up my address on my phone, dropped a pin on the cabin, and saved the screenshot. Pin right at the end of the lane, where the roof showed through the trees. 2 months later, after a string of nights where the tapping never stopped, not just 4 walls once, but loops over and over until dawn, I checked again. The satellite image still showed trees, the faint lighter square of the roof. But when I dropped the pin on where I knew the cabin sat, the app snapped it back up the lane to the old trailer lot near the road. No matter how I tried, the map would not let me say, here. It only accepted, near here. Then the mail changed. My bills started coming addressed to just the route and box number, no street name. Packages got delayed because address not found. The power company called to ask if I had moved. Their system kept flagging my meter as inactive location. When I gave directions over the phone, the woman on the line said, "Our map does not show anything past the cul-de-sac, sir." There is no cul-de-sac on that road, just the lane, and beyond it, my cabin. On my last night there, I woke up to silence. No tapping, no footsteps, no wind. The kind of silence you get right before something heavy falls. My bedroom door was open a crack. Through it, I could see the main room, lit dimly by the coals in the wood stove. The chair by the window was turned toward my room, not angled slightly, not off by a degree. Fully, perfectly aligned with the doorway, as if someone had been sitting there, staring at me sleep. I sat up. The mattress sighed. From the chair, I heard my own voice again, soft and almost gentle. "Stay," it said. "You do not have to go back." I did not argue. I did not obey either. I stood, grabbed the duffel I had never quite finished unpacking, and walked out. I did not turn off lights. I did not lock the door. I did not look at the chair. Outside, the woods felt closer to the cabin than they had when I moved in. Trees leaning in, branches almost brushing the porch rail. At the end of the lane, where gravel meets paved road, I stopped and looked back. The trees were just a thick, black wall. No cabin roof, no glint of glass. For a second, I had the insane thought that if I walked back up, there would be nothing there. Just the imprint of a foundation in the dirt. That if I opened my photos on my phone, every picture I took inside would be blurry, the background smudged like a thumb had been dragged across reality. I did not test it. I got in the car and drove. In town, my address works. Maps know the street. The mail arrives on time. At night, in my new apartment with neighbors above and below, I still hear footsteps sometimes. But they are ordinary human ones, irritating but harmless. Every once in a while, someone mentions that old hollow and how there used to be a cabin back there. Years ago, before the road washed out. They say it burned down. They say it was condemned. They say it never passed inspection. Stories change depending on who is talking. I do not correct them. If you ever find a place that seems to like you a little too much, that anticipates you before you act, that makes it easier and easier to stay inside and harder to leave, do yourself a favor. Check the map, drop a pin, and if one day It refuses to stick exactly where your front door is. Understand that the place you call home may have decided you are not a visitor anymore. You are inventory. I was 8 years old the first time I watched a man disappear into a wall that did not exist. Back then, the new multiplex just off the highway was the pride of our little Appalachian town. 8 whole screens, neon lights, a lobby that smelled like butter and sugar and cold air conditioning. My mother called it the city in a box. For me, it was magic. Cartoons 10 feet tall, sodas as big as my head. The bathrooms were down a long corridor off the main lobby, past the poster frames and the arcade machines. On Saturday afternoons, that hallway was a river of kids and parents and teenagers trying to look bored. My mother did not like crowds, so she always sent me ahead with, "You know the way, Eli. I will be right here when you get back." That day, the line at the women's restroom was wrapped halfway around the corner. She gave me a strained smile and waved me toward the men's, which was empty except for one stall door closed and a man washing his hands at the sink. He was the first thing that felt off. Not because he looked scary. He did not. He wore a brown coat, the kind my grandfather wore to church, and a flat cap. His hair was neatly trimmed. His shoes were polished. He could have been anybody's uncle or neighbor. But he was not moving quite right. His hands were under the running water, but he was not rubbing them together. Just holding them there, fingers spread, staring at his own reflection. The tap was on full, splashing, going nowhere. From where I stood, I could see his mouth in the mirror. It was open just a bit, like he was caught halfway between words and had forgotten the rest of the sentence. I did what any 8-year-old boy intent on proving he was not scared of public bathrooms would do. I walked past him to the urinal, stared at the tiles, and pretended I did not notice him at all. He did not look at me, did not shift, did not turn off the tap. When I finished, I went to the sink furthest from him and washed my hands, quick and perfunctory. The water coming out of my faucet was warm. The water from his was ice cold. I could feel it from half the counter away, a chill radiating off the stream. That is when I realized there was no sound coming from his sink. Mine gushed and echoed. His poured in silence. The hairs on my arms lifted. I dried my hands on my jeans and turned to leave. As I reached the door, he spoke. "Do you know where Theater 9 is?" he asked, in a voice that sounded like someone had pulled it up from the bottom of a well. Slow, thick, every syllable a little delayed. I stopped with my hand on the push bar. "It is down the hall on the right," I said, pointing back the way I came. "The numbers are on the doors." He did not look at the door, did not look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on the mirror. "They moved it," he said. "It used to be different." I did not know what to say to that. I was 8. Theater 9 might as well have been the moon to me. I mumbled, "My mom is waiting," and pushed through the door. The hallway outside was full of people. Families, clumps of teenagers, a couple of old ladies with popcorn tubs clutched in bony hands. Normal Saturday crowd. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The carpet pattern stung my eyes. I stood there, heart beating too fast, and told myself I was being stupid. A weird man in a bathroom, that was all. Plenty of those in the world. My mother would have told me not to talk to him at all. I took 3 steps away from the door. Then, for reasons I have never been able to explain properly, I turned back and pushed it open again. The bathroom was empty. The sink where the man had stood was dry. No puddle, no dripping tap. The mirror was clear, no smear where his breath had fogged it. The stall door at the end was still closed. I called out a tentative, "Hello?" My voice bounced off tile and porcelain and came back smaller. The stall door creaked. My heart jumped into my throat. For a second, I pictured him stepping out. Face wrong, eyes too wide. Instead, the door swung inward on its own, bumping the partition. The stall was empty. Toilet seat up. No feet, no shoes, no shadow. I backed out again, this time not looking away until I was in the hallway with the noise and the people and the smell of popcorn. I did not tell my mother. Not then. I was afraid she would be mad that I had talked to a stranger. Afraid she would laugh, afraid she would tell me I had imagined it, and I would have to choose between believing her and believing my own eyes. So I kept it, a little knot of wrongness in the back of my head. Years went by. We kept going to that theater. I avoided that restroom when I could. When I could not, I rushed in and out, refusing to look too long at the mirrors. By the time I was in high school, the multiplex had stopped being shiny. The carpets were stained. The neon flickered. Everyone talked about the newer place 2 towns over with reclining seats. Our theater was where you went if you did not have gas money. One night, home from college and bored, I ended up in the kitchen listening to my dad and uncle talk about how this town has changed. It was the usual list. Factories closed, kids leaving, Main Street dying. Then my uncle said, "You remember when that theater first opened? Folks acted like it was the second coming." My dad snorted. "They built it on a lie to begin with." "How so?" I asked, happy for any distraction from their litany of complaints. "They screwed up the blueprints," he said. "There was supposed to be a whole other hallway on the back side. Extra 2 screens, more bathrooms, storage. Got halfway through framing before they realized the ground back there was too unstable. Old coal seam under it or something. They had to tear it out and seal the wall. Whole thing cost a fortune." My uncle nodded. "City inspector said they should have never dug there. Said it was like the mountain did not want a door in that spot." "Where was it?" I asked, my skin already prickling. "Behind where the arcade is now," Dad said. "Long hall they bricked over. You can still see where the floor plan does not make sense if you really look." Later that week, I went back to the theater with a couple of friends to see some horror sequel, Habit More Than Desire. While they bought snacks, I walked down the bathroom corridor alone. The hallway felt narrower than I remembered. The men's room door was in the same place, the same scuffed metal plate at the bottom. Across from it, the wall where the poster frames hung had a long, slightly raised seam running down the length of it. Painted over, but visible if you knew to look. A faint, vertical line, like a healed scar. I stepped up to it and laid my palm flat. The wall felt hollow is the only word I have. Not empty, not exactly, but wrong for where it should be solid. My hand tingled. Behind me, the bathroom door opened. A man in a brown coat and flat cap stepped out, head down, moving slowly. For half a second, my heart stopped. Then he turned toward me, and I saw his face clearly in the hallway light. Different man, same clothes. Just a coincidence. That is what I told myself as he brushed past, smelling of aftershave and popcorn butter. He walked down the hall, then stopped right where that barely visible seam met the side wall. He frowned, reached out as if to push on air, and his hand met plaster instead. He stared at it, confused, like he had expected there to be a gap. Used to be different. He muttered, almost exactly the way the man in my memory had. I did not say anything to him. He shook his head, blinked like someone waking up, and went toward the lobby. That night, I dreamed of the bathroom as it should have been, with a second corridor leading past it. In the dream, I stood where the seam in the wall is and watched people walking down that other hall. Families, kids, older couples holding hands. They were all slightly faded, as if seen through old glass. None of them looked back at me. At the end of the hall in the dream was a door marked Theater 9. The number was the same as our real Theater 9, but the font was older, more ornate. Light leaked around the frame, flickering like projector glow. I could hear something on the other side. A soundtrack, maybe. But the low undercurrent did not sound like any movie I had heard. It sounded hungry. In the dream, I reached for the handle. Before I could touch it, something from the other side moved closer to the crack, pressing against the door. The frame swelled, wood groaning. A breath of air pushed through, smelling like old coal and cold water and 1,000 people's exhalations trapped with nowhere to go. I woke up with my hand outstretched, fingers curled around nothing. I do not go to that theater much anymore. Life took me to bigger towns with newer screens. But whenever I visit home and drive past, I look at the back of the building where the hill slopes up against it. If you look closely, you can see where the addition would have been, the hump in the earth that covers what they tore out. They say the ground back there is too unstable to build on, that there are old tunnels underneath from mines nobody mapped properly, that if you dig, the earth caves in. I sometimes wonder if, under all that dirt and concrete, there is still a corridor, still a door marked Theater 9 in a font nobody uses anymore. Still a bathroom where a man stands, hands under silent water, waiting for someone to tell him the way to a place that no longer exists. And I wonder, if the mountain did not want a door there, what exactly it was trying to keep in or out. If you ever find yourself in a building where the floor plan does not make sense, where a wall feels hollow under your palm and your reflection in the bathroom mirror seems too still, remember this. Not every door that was built stayed open, and not every place that is gone on paper is gone in truth. Somewhere, just a few inches and a few bad decisions away, there might still be a hallway full of people walking toward a movie that never ends.